what purpose does the gentleman from North Carolina seek recognition?
I seek unanimous consent to speak for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Madam Speaker, you have squandered the inheritance of a generation today. You have governed with abandon and exchanged financial assurance for instant gratification. Today, you didn't pass a budget plan. You passed a death wish for America. It is easy for you to sit up there and authorize $68 trillion over the next 10 years because you will never have to shoulder the financial burden of your actions. Your roadmap for our future is a highway to hell. You have exchanged the American dream for a socialist nightmare. To the American people, you have been lied to. Your taxes will be raised because of the actions of Democrats today. I shudder to think of what our country, our city on a hill, our beacon of freedom will look like in a generation when we have delivered a nation devoid of treasure to our children. We will give account one day for our actions in this Congress. If we hand over a bankrupt legacy to our children, your actions today will be indicted and you will be without excuse. Madam Speaker, you are walking around with my generation's checkbook, and we want it back. And with that, I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Florida seek recognition?
The gentleman from North Carolina seek recognition.
Madam Speaker, I seek unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Madam Speaker, you are not God. Your will does not bend the forest or shake the mountains. And let me assure you, your will does not bow the knee of millions of my countrymen who refuse to heed your callous command. To threaten arrest on others for their own personal medical decisions is nothing short of a medical apartheid, and I will not let it stand. For if I am to cowardly bend the knee here like those on the left wish, then what is to stop you all from taking your tyranny to the rest of this country that I love? How dare anyone in this institution attempt to dictate to the patriots of my staff how they may live their lives? For one to think that because they have the title honorable attached to their name means that they may dictate what others may say and think repulses me. What makes this nation special is that in this free land, the people are the royalty. So arrest us if you will, but I will not cower and I will not bend. Madam Speaker, you have come to take away our liberties. But Madam Speaker, in this country, you are outnumbered. With that, I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Texas? For what purpose does the gentleman from North Carolina seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, I hereby wish to remove my name as a co-sponsor of Bill H.R. 4390.
The gentleman's request is accepted.
The gentleman's request is accepted. Okay. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Texas seek recognition?
For unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
Very much, and happy to take questions.
Thanks. Thanks, Mr. Secretary, for coming down and doing this. On your two things, really briefly, I'll try to be as brief as possible. Two things on your numbers of the American citizens. Does that include green card holders, LPRs? And if it doesn't, or it does? Okay.
No, it does
not.
Oh,
it does not. Okay. Is there a way to get
These
the
are
number?
passport holders.
Okay, but have LPRs also been contacted?
Yep.
And what about SIV applicants, people who are eligible?
We are in contact
So
with
can we get numbers
all
for
of the
those,
different
even if
categories.
you don't? And then,
Go ahead. I'm sorry, Matt.
it's okay. I don't expect you to have all of the numbers. But then, since this whole thing began, there's been a lot of criticism of the administration over how it handled it. And there's been a lot of pushback from people within the administration about the hand that you were basically dealt, or what you say you were dealt by the previous administration in terms of the deal with the Taliban, in terms of the SIV program, in terms of the broader refugee program. But you guys have been in office for almost 8 months. It's been 5 months since the president's decision was made. Is there anything about the shortcomings that have been so readily identified by all sorts of people that you guys are actually willing to take responsibility for yourselves?
Thanks, Matt. Let me say two things. First, with regard to the numbers in these different categories, as you've seen by how I've laid out how we get to the numbers of Americans, this is both incredibly complicated and incredibly fluid. Any number I give you right now is likely to be out of date by the time we leave this briefing room. So what we're doing is very carefully tabulating everything we have, cross-checking it, referencing it, using different databases. We will have numbers for all those different categories in the days ahead and after this initial phase of efforts to bring people out of Afghanistan ends. And with regard to the second part of your question about taking responsibility, I take responsibility. I know the President has said he takes responsibility. And I know all of my colleagues across government feel the same way. And I can tell you that there will be plenty of time to look back at the last 6 or 7 months, to look back at the last 20 years, and to look to see what we might have done differently, what we might have done sooner, what we might have done more effectively. But I have to tell you that right now, my entire focus is on the mission at hand. And there's going to be, as I said, plenty of time to do an accounting of this when we get through that mission.
Thank you, Jen. At the tail end of the President's remarks today about cybersecurity, he was asked about Afghanistan, and he made a joke.
I think Peter asked him that question.
The other Peter did, and he made a joke. So what's so funny?
Well, I think the question he was asked, if I remember correctly, was about when he will provide information about a decision on August 31st. I don't want to paraphrase the question if that was an inaccurate description of the question.
To a lot of people watching.
Of course, it's a very important question. And I think what he conveyed is that he has not, well, what I can convey from here, I should say, is that as he stated yesterday, and as the Secretary of State just stated, we're on track to complete our mission by August 31st. Obviously, there are discussions, and the President received a briefing just this morning. As I noted, he asked yesterday for contingency plans, and he received a briefing on them this morning. These are incredibly serious issues, and there are discussions that are happening internally. And I'd note that in addition to the contingency plans that he requested, he also, I will reiterate, as we stated yesterday, that this is all contingent on us achieving our objectives and the continued coordination with the Taliban. And the President has spoken, I would say, to this issue. Peter, as you know, you've been attended a number of these multiple times over the last several days. And he has also highlighted the fact that we are closely watching, closely following the threats from ISIS-K, which he also received a briefing on this morning.
And his remarks last night, he gave a lot of time to the domestic agenda. Does he think that the Build Back Better plan is as urgent and as time sensitive as this evacuation of Americans and Afghan friendlies from Kabul?
Well, first of all, I think it's important to the American people who care deeply about whether they're going to have jobs, whether they're going to have child care, whether we are going to be able to compete with China and countries around the world, to understand that we have to do multiple things at the same time. That's exactly what any president of the United States has to do.
And the next one, just as these negotiations about safe passage for Americans and SIV holders continue, why haven't we heard the president say the United States does not negotiate with terrorists? Is that still the U.S. policy?
Well, of course it is, Peter, but I would also say that there's a reality that the Taliban is currently controlling large swaths of Afghanistan. That is a reality on the ground. And right now our focus and our priority is getting American citizens evacuated and our Afghan partners evacuated. And I would say, given the numbers that we've outlined and briefed for you, that we've made a great deal of progress in doing exactly that.
So 2 members have gone to Afghanistan yesterday. Can I get your reaction to their trip? What are members who are interested in going to Afghanistan and neighboring countries at this time?
Not to go. We need the military's all their effort used on bringing people back home. These are 2 individuals who I didn't know transpired that they went until after they were there. They're both veterans. They're both frustrated. They have an administration that won't tell them the answers to how many Americans are left, or those Afghans that actually probably worked with them and helped them. They feel frustrated. They come back in a special session and no time is spent. Yesterday we were allowed 90 minutes to have a briefing. While people were still lined up, a number of members, the Democrats shut it down and said, no, we have to have a hard break to go back and debate the $5 trillion bill. I objected. I thought this was more important. But they would not allow them to even be able to talk to the Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense, and others, lined up, Republicans and Democrats alike. But that's what they chose the time to do. So yes, it's not the best idea to go there, but I understand their frustration by the lack of any answers from this administration, from a speaker who spends late into the night late into the night, you all covered it, into her office. Not one moment of that time was spent on getting Americans home from Afghanistan. What did you think those Americans were doing late at night trying to find a path to get to that airport? That the president told them it was safe to go, but now we're finding they were beaten. Not one moment was spent on it. Not $1 was passed this time in Congress. $5 trillion, just deemed, not debated. None of that money going to help an American get back. And then they pass a political campaign bill to change election law. They are the most self-serving individuals it showed this week than at any given time. Of all weeks of what we should have focused upon, not any moment of time to do it. So yes, I don't think it's right that they went, but I understand their frustration of why they would want to go, by the lack of answers they were getting, the time they served their nation, the individuals they knew over there, the calls. All members are getting calls of people stuck there. They're frustrated trying to work with the State Department, can't get answers. They realize it's life and death. So yes, they made a decision to try to do something on their own.
Are you hearing from members that might be going